This is the cheapest camera that I could find on Amazon. Believe it or not, this little thing is packed with 48 megapixels, 4K video, and apparently has face detection. We'll see about that. It also comes with not one but two spare batteries, and a 64 gig memory card is included in the box, which I couldn't find at first anywhere, but then I found it neatly tucked away in the camera. It's a micro SD card. It even has a selfie camera on the back above the LCD display for those times that you want to look like you're taking a photo of someone else, but you actually want to take a photo of yourself. Why is that there? I'm not sure why that's there. There is also a 3.5mm microphone jack on the side, along with a USB-C input so that you can charge the camera. And you might be thinking that these sound like some pretty high-end specs that you get on higher-end cameras, and that this camera is going to be quite expensive. You'd be very, very wrong, because you can get all of this, the grand old price of 25 quid. Why would you want to spend 2.5 grand on a Sony when you can have this for 25 quid? Now, obviously I'm joking. Of course you wouldn't consider buying this over any high-end mirrorless camera, unless it was a Sony. I'm joking. But I made a YouTube short about this the other day and said the exact same joke, and I had loads of people in the comments that clearly didn't understand the sarcasm and were asking for links to go and buy this thing. I will link it down below if you want to go and check it out, but I'm saying it now, I wouldn't recommend it. But there is no real way to be able to compare this to a high-end mirrorless camera like the Lumix S5 2X that I'm using now to film this, because they're just not in the same league. It's not fair, really, is it? I just thought it would be a bit of fun to find the cheapest camera that I could find on Amazon and make a video about it. Build quality wise, it definitely feels like it was 25 quid. It is very cheap and... it sounds hollow. Very cheap and tacky. The buttons feel awful. As you turn it on, it makes this noise. The lens on the front isn't really a lens, and what looks like a manual focus ring on the front definitely isn't a manual focus ring. It doesn't do anything, it doesn't turn. But it does have 18 times powerful zoom, which you can control with the little dial that's just below the shutter button, where you'd usually have the aperture dial or something like that. Again, what looks like a dial where the power button isn't really a dial. It doesn't move, it's just locked into place. And I'm not convinced by what it says on the lens either, where it says f2 or f2.2. Is it f2 or f2.2? And even if it was one of those, I'm not convinced it's one of those. What else have we got? We've got a cold shoe mount, so you can attach your external microphone and plug it into your microphone port on the side. And oh, we got a little flash on the front there as well. I'm not sure on the sensor size of this thing, but I think it's probably fair to say that it is one of the smallest sensors you will ever find. If you look at the lens, or what is meant to be the lens on the front, what's meant to look like the lens, there is the smallest little hole to let light in through. It's like the size of a pinhead. So yeah, there's not much light getting into this thing, and the sensor isn't capturing much light either. This is also advertised as having a 48 megapixel sensor, and while that might technically be true, that doesn't mean anything in terms of image quality, because the photos that you get from this look like they've been shot on a potato. More megapixels, I've made videos about this before, more megapixels doesn't equate to better image quality. And to prove that, the Lumix S5 2X that I'm using right now, the S5 II that is sat behind me, and the Lumix S9 all have the same full frame 24 megapixel sensor. And yes, they are full frame, so they can capture a lot more light, and this has the sensor the size of an ant, but 24 megapixels, 48 megapixels, it doesn't equate to better image quality. I don't know why I'm getting so hung up on that. Not that if you were looking at buying this, you're interested in megapixel count, because why would you be? It only shoots JPEGs as well, so if you are someone that's wanting to shoot RAW and edit your photos, it might surprise you, but this camera isn't for you. There's also no way, that I've been able to find anyway, to be able to control your settings manually. There is this little dial on the front, on the top even, where you would usually have all of your mode selections, your aperture priority, your manual settings, your video settings. But on this, all I can figure out that it does is it changes the filter that it is taking the photo with. I think this one personally is my favourite, but what are you ever going to do with that? It looks awful. But for 25 beans, you cannot complain. If this was like your first camera as a kid when you were growing up as like a toy,
You are a toy!
I think it would actually be a lot of fun, just like going around and pointing it in your cat's face and annoying people with it. When you stick it in video, there's not a lot to say really. It does technically have 4K video, but again, like with the megapixel issue before, it doesn't equate to better image quality. So where it says 4K Ultra HD on the back, I think that's there just as a little bit of a marketing tool really. I mentioned earlier that this camera is meant to have face tracking. Again, I don't think it does. When it comes to face tracking, I think that the depth of field on this camera is so deep because the sensor is that small. And yes, it says it's got an f2 aperture, but that I don't think it has. Well, it might do, but with a sensor that small, your depth of field is that deep that most things are going to be in focus anyway. And when you get really close, you can see the focus starting to hunt, and you can see how slow it really is. Dynamic range, like I mentioned before, non-existent. So what actually is the point in a camera like this? Because surely you're just going to get better photos even just using your iPhone. And yes, that would be true. Phone cameras are genuinely really remarkably capable now because they have some insane technology packed into these to be able to get some incredible results with sensors that small due to all of the computational algorithms and things like that I don't understand. This could not be further away from that. This is like the most basic thing you've ever seen with the smallest sensor you've ever seen. Oops, it's falling apart. A full frame camera or a Micro Four Thirds or APS-C camera is not even worth mentioning in the same sentence as this. A full frame camera is just going to walk all over this. This is a toy.
You are a toy!
For kids growing up as their first camera to be able to just point and shoot and annoy people with, this is ideal. So I will link this camera down below in the description if you want to go and check it out for some reason. I definitely wouldn't actually recommend you buy one unless it is for a toy for a kid. If you are starting to get an interest in photography, genuinely just go out with your phone and get your head around photography in that sense before you start to look at an APS-C or a full frame camera that you can go out and use properly. This is a toy. I don't really know why I've made this video. I don't know what I was expecting. It's a little bit of fun. But yeah, if you want to know more about photography and you like what you see on this channel, I recommend you go and watch this video next.